All right, thank you. Sorry for the delays. Gotta love technology when it works. Unfortunately, today is one of those days where it didn't, but we've got good technology people. Thank you to Rob at MyEntranet for getting us back in the groove. It is my pleasure. I'm going to go straight into my introduction because I don't want you to lose any of this great information that we have today. Troy is a pretty consistent speaker for ABI. We certainly appreciate all of his talent and information that he brings to all of these planning areas in his areas of expertise. Troy joined the Principal Financial Group in early 2004 after serving as a national cross-sell manager for Wells Fargo. He started in the financial services business as a fee-based financial and business advisor for over 20 years ago. During his time at the Principal, he's worked with their largest distribution partners in delivering solutions to help business owners solve the problems they face in recruiting, rewarding, retaining, and retiring their key people. Troy built a private financial services practice and later sold that practice to a partner. A significant part of his time has been spent working with business owners and executives in the small to mid-sized business market. Troy has multiple professional designations and works with financial representatives in helping their business clients transition their businesses to family members, outside parties, or to employees. On a personal note, he makes his home just south of Des Moines in Norwalk with his wife and 2 young daughters. So thank you, Troy. We appreciate having you here.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate everyone, your attendance today. I will try very hard to keep within the time frame allowed. I have some prepared remarks that go along with some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, but clearly if there's questions or things that come up, type them in or whatever the case might be, and we'll address those as they go along. As was mentioned, working for Principal Financial Group and working with a lot of our advisors around the country. I spend my time traveling quite a bit, and I've been a speaker in the past. Was at last year's statewide meeting. We did some sessions last year. I think we'll probably be doing some more sessions this year. Look for us in June at the conference. Let me talk a little bit about really just ESOPs in general, and I want to be somewhat, at least initially, talking about some of the things that we see, some of the things we see some of our business clients do, and some of the things our advisors bring to us, and some of the work that we do in working with those organizations. What's interesting about this is, and I think a part of these statistics are based upon some of the things with respect to the U.S. Census Bureau. We hear all the time about baby boomers, and we hear about the fact that there's a number of these folks that are going to be retiring, and it's, I think, something to the tune of 78 million baby boomers that are going to be retiring. What's interesting about that, though, is that a number of those baby boomers just happen to be business owners, and clearly more than half of those individuals that are going to be retiring are business owners. And the intent, I think, for a number of those business owners is really in the next 8 to 10 years that they plan to retire either from their business or out of their business. So I think it provides a pretty good opportunity to talk a little bit about ESOPs as a planning strategy for those individuals and for the people that are involved either with those organizations or working for those firms. I think the economic environment, I think we can all agree that over the last several years, the economic environment has been somewhat tenuous. This really has affected, ESOP transactions. I think first and foremost, stock valuations, whether it be a public company or a private company, clearly have been impacted. We hear one of three perspectives from our business owner clients. One is they're doing everything they can to keep their doors open, to keep their business going. We hear others that say to us, their business has just maintained. There's been no growth. It's been relatively stagnant. And then in some circumstances, we do hear from business owners who say, their business, because of the economic environment, their business is off the charts. So I think there's probably a fewer number of those that would say their business is off the charts, and a vast majority of them that have are in those other two classifications. But the things that we see, that obviously the economic environment is improving. We're seeing clearly some changes that are taking place with, pending tax legislation, capital gains rates, and some of those kinds of things. Capital gains rates are expected to increase, at the end of this year because of the extension of the prior administration's tax cuts. So business owners may have a little bit more of a motivation perhaps this year, depending upon what we see going forward from a tax structure standpoint. A business owner that's going to be selling their business potentially may see dramatic increases because of the healthcare legislation, an increase in investment income. So I think this is a great economic time to be having the discussion with business owners, maybe with some of you there as part of today's session, about ESOPs as a potential solution. We offer, as an organization, Principal's perspective is we offer solutions-based approaches for our business owners. Along with that, the key people and the people that help manage risk for those companies. It's something that we specialize in. I think there's a lot of companies that would say that this is some of the work that they do. It happens to be our level of expertise. One of the things that we say to our business owner clients is that, Principal as an organization specializes in business owner and executive solutions, and the slide I have up here really is a representation of the multiple areas that we see when we have conversations with business owners about the things that are critically important to them and the things that they have the most interest in. And it really revolves around exit planning of their business. It revolves around wealth transfer, survivor income, income protection of their business. Retirement income obviously is top of mind for, I think, everybody in the marketplace today. So, but this is the primary level of expertise that we bring to the table, along with a lot of the things that we do organizationally with investment management, with retirement planning, and a variety of other areas that Principal as an organization brings to the business marketplace. I want to talk a little bit about those 6 specific areas, though, just in brief. First and foremost, in the survivor income arena, I think the planning questions and the things that we bring to light during these discussions, how would your survivors fare if you're no longer around to run your company? What would they do for income? And on the income protection side, really revolves around levels of disability and disability coverage and risk management. If you were to become disabled, how would you protect your income for you, your family? How would your employees deal with some of those issues? Business protection is something, I think, of the top 3 things that business owners talk to us about. This is probably one of the top 3 that we hear very consistently. And the questions, again, that we bring up about this really is, what steps have you taken to protect your business against the death or disability of a key person? What types of things are you trying to do to avoid losing them perhaps to a key competitor? So the elements of business protection aren't necessarily revolving specifically around death or disability, but part of business protection, we believe, revolves also around keeping those key people engaged in your business and helping keep them around for extended periods of time. I think in some of the remarks Lisa made earlier was talking about rewarding, retaining, retiring. And again, a big part of this work that we do is really around multiple things to try to keep those key people engaged in your business or with the business to help reward them and retire them from the business. The 4th area that we like to talk about obviously is retirement and retirement planning. We talk to business owners about what percentage of their retirement plan is funded with their business. Not surprisingly, a vast majority or a larger number of the business owners that we talk with say, my retirement is my business. These are the things I'm relying upon, either the sale or the transition of my business to really fund the lifestyle that I've grown accustomed to. And these are the things that I'm looking to achieve with respect to the business. And again, it's about converting the business equity into cash or retirement income. So again, a number of areas that we see that on a consistent and regular basis as we talk to these owners and executives. On the exit planning side, ultimately, there's an element of control that comes into mind as it relates to transitioning the company, whether a living exit or a death exit. Now, I think everyone would contend that the best strategy is, how do I leave my business in a format by which I can, I heard one business owner say to me, I want to kind of go right off in the sun. He was going to retire to Arizona. I want to go right off in the sunset, leaving a well-sustained working business either for my family or my key people. And how do we go about doing that? And that's really talking about some of the exit planning things. And then probably more importantly for some of them is, how do I minimize some of the estate taxes that I'm going to see, and really maximize the value, the proceeds of my estate that are going to transition to my heirs. So a lot of these components really come into play ultimately together. I want to take just a few minutes and talk specifically about the exit planning side of things, because I do want to talk about the ESOPs. And the question sometimes that gets raised is, if there's a way that we could show you really conceptually that you could sell some of the company to a ready, willing, and able buyer at a fair market value, avoid potentially paying any capital gains tax, and use secure financing on a pre-tax basis to do that, is this something that most business owners would have an interest in? And the response we typically get is yes. Now, granted, they're loaded questions, and the reason behind them, quite frankly, is to really kind of begin this engagement process to talk about ESOPs with our customers and talk about these as a potential planning opportunity. Now, an ESOP, in short, quite frankly, it's an employee stock ownership plan. And as a benefit plan, it allows shareholders of closely held companies, corporations, to sell their stock at a fair market value to friendly buyers with some tax advantages. And clearly, the employees of the company, share in that profitability through stock ownership. So in a very succinct format, it's a way for employees and owners to participate in the company and to transition the business in a format by which it's friendly to everyone. Are tax deductible as an employee benefit expense within certain amount of limits, and that's some of the work that we do and try to in some of the analysis that gets done between ourselves and the planning team of the business owner, understanding what those limits would look like specifically for them. Plan assets are held in a trust for the exclusive benefit of participants, but I think an important note on that is the earnings on the assets do not generate current income taxes. So again, it's a way for businesses to transition. You can use ESOPs in the format of a qualified plan to benefit the collective group of employees, still maintain some elements of control, and obviously the earnings, there's some tax advantages on the earnings side. With respect to differences between other types of qualified plans, an ESOP really holds one security. It holds employee stock, or excuse me, it holds employer stock. The ESOP typically uses the company's credit ability to borrow money to buy stock from shareholders of that same company, and it really revolves around the helping owners understand how they can use this as a tool, how they can use their credit quality to kind of help with some of these transitions, and to use credits in a friendly format in helping transition out shareholders. There's some elements of corporate governance and control, and ESOP owns the stock, not the employees. The trust is essentially one shareholder. The ESOP trustee votes the shares. The ESOP trustee can be directed how to vote. Employees are not shareholders and do not have shareholder rights. There's some pass-through things with respect to some requirements as it relates to triggering events of perhaps a merger and acquisition. And some of those details are further described as we do more work with specific clients in this arena. I do want to talk a little bit about how ESOPs really kind of can help a business owner. I think first and foremost, owners or companies are looking for strategies or a way really to enable a shareholder or shareholders to exit a company either over a period of time, or they want to do a phased-in exit. This is one of the things ESOPs allow us to be able to do, or really allow business owners to do. It also provides a way for really an owner or a larger shareholder to diversify maybe perhaps some of their personal assets. I heard a client say to me one time that it's a little bit like Texas Hold'em. I'm able to get some of my chips off the table, so to speak. And also a way potentially to buy out minority shareholders. So it really, again, an ESOP in general creates a mechanism to enable shareholders to really either immediately exit the business. It can help with the facilitation of a phased-in exit. Can diversify a shareholder's personal assets and potentially get out minority shareholders. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility as it relates to ESOPs and the things that you're able to do from a planning standpoint. Clearly, most business owners have some succession plan in mind, and an ESOP can provide a way to create that succession plan while they're alive and healthy. It's also a way to motivate employees and give them perhaps some equity incentives to continue to help grow the business. Also perhaps fulfill their desire to kind of take care of my employees. I know the number of business owners that we've worked with who said that specifically. There are things they're looking for, and one of the things is a way to this specific quote, take care of my employees. And ESOPs can also be used as a tool to kind of grow company through tax advantage acquisitions. And I'm not going to spend much time at all talking about the tax elements of this. I think we would contend that as really part of a planning team, you'd want to engage legal counsel and your accounting professionals and really bring this team together to maybe look at this as a viable solution for you. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is really some of the other ways in helping the business owner specifically. Being in a position to kind of help, kind of monetize the fair market value of the business. Business owners and shareholders can realize the fair market value of the business. They already have a ready market for the stock, and while it eases concerns, they don't have to introduce outside shareholders into the mix. And the ESOP also gives them the ability to retain control over the company. And I think one of the single largest advantages is the fact that they get to defer capital gains taxes on the sale of the ESOP. Again, so long as it's properly structured and you follow the certain rules and regulations and guidelines around it. So, that's one. I think again, one of the big things about the ESOP is really kind of summarized right here in front of us. Clearly, from a company standpoint, it's a way to help save some tax dollars. It can really help facilitate really a smooth transition of company ownership. And as in the remarks that were made earlier, reward, retain, recruit, add some people from a quality workforce perspective. Clearly, retiring is part of the mix is there as well. Help create kind of an ownership culture, which I think overall improves employee morale along with profits. It was interesting that I was sitting with a client about this who was implementing an ESOP, and there was a lot of, I think, concern on the part of the employees, and they brought everybody into an employee meeting, and the owner of the company talked about, there's been a lot of there's been a lot of buzz at the company. There's been a lot of concern. There's been a lot of questions that have been raised. And yes, the company is being sold, and there was kind of a hush that fell over the group. He said, but what I'd really like you to do is I'd like you to turn to the next person and shake their hand, because there's the person who owns the company. And it was amazing to me to kind of see the reaction of the employees of that firm, of that organization, almost the stark realization that they became owners of the company. And a greater interest was taking in on a go-forward basis just about how important it was for those employees to maintain the culture, maintain the profitability of the organization, and to do everything they could to drive more profit, because it was a direct impact to them. So it was a really cool thing to see. As we talk about employees, I think there are some advantages to the employee from an employee participant standpoint. The employee receives essentially equity in the company without really investing their own money. They will personally gain in future growth of the company, to enhance their retirement savings, some degree of increase in job security. ESOPs can perpetuate a company and create a smooth ownership transition over a longer period of time. So, I think the story that I mentioned earlier, and the fact that that the comment here on the slide is kind of skin in the game. When people have a personal interest, or when they have a personal gain that may come into play, their engagement level in working for an organization or with a firm is increased dramatically. And they have a much stronger vested interest in the retirement that they have and the retirement savings they're set aside, as well as doing everything they can so that the business can continue successfully. Is it the right choice? Is an ESOP a right choice? I would not say an ESOP is right for everybody. But in asking the question to ourselves, or really, is it the right choice? First, I think it's important to determine, do I want to exit this business immediately and simply walk away free and clear? Or do I want to exit over time and to maybe take an active role in the transition process? I think if the owner or stakeholder wants to exit immediately and simply walk away free and clear, or exit over a period of time during this planning process, these are the things that really have to come to light to determine whether or not an ESOP does make sense from an owner standpoint. So, one of the things we always talk about contingency plans when we talk about ESOP planning. Plan A, it would be an exit plan implemented while you're alive and healthy. Plan B would be to develop an exit plan upon death or disability. And I think most people would say that Plan A is the one that they really want to do. Plan B is on the risk management side, is how do we address some of these issues from a risk management perspective, and can an ESOP be part of that planning transition? And the short answer is probably yes, but we'd want to have a much more in-depth conversation about that from an owner standpoint. A couple things with respect to note here. First is an ESOP really allows you, basically, an owner or a majority shareholder to sell a majority interest in the company and still maintain control. There's no price haggling, because the price is the fair market value or less, based upon what the valuations come in at. The owner will avoid paying, subject to tax law, any capital gains tax, and they can purchase shareholders' equity interest with pre-tax dollars. So these are some of the things that make ESOPs unique compared to other types of plans. From a business owner or shareholder perspective, the business owner controls both the timing and number of shares sold to the ESOP. Kind of the day-to-day operations of the business, of the company during the transition process, and to a certain extent, even potentially after the ESOP owns a majority of the shares, those day-to-day operations can still be in control of the owner of or the majority stakeholder. So again, there is just so many unique things specific to ESOPs that allow owners and shareholders to utilize from a transitional exit planning standpoint. One of the things we talk about are building blocks with respect to an ESOP transaction. And there's a number of things that we do from a design, both from a comprehensive design or preliminary design perspective. I think first and foremost for any organization, if it's something to consider, to me it makes sense to do some type of feasibility analysis. And you can see kind of the blocks of this thing with respect to the things that would need to be done. Again, from a foundational standpoint, some type of feasibility analysis, some valuation is financing part of it. There's legal documents, there's investment planning, there's administration, there's employee communication. So there's a number of things that go through with respect to this process. And Principal as an organization specializes in all of these things. We're the largest ESOP provider in the country. As well as obviously, some of you are aware of the fact of the business of the 401k business that we do, and some of you may have 401k business with Principal. But Principal as an organization, again, is the largest ESOP provider in the country. We talk about, kind of that first element of it, from a feasibility standpoint. The implementation of a feasibility analysis really is kind of that first phase of the process. Establishing, current business value, the ESOP design and structure to meet shareholder and company goals, determining the financial impact and financing options while weighing kind of that cost-benefit analysis. And typically the business valuation is performed by an independent appraiser. So, this is really kind of the first piece or the first phase of what needs to be done with respect to the degree of analysis and going down this road of an ESOP. Clearly the goals of the analysis really deal primarily with establishing the value, determining really who the key management team and who the players are, whether or not an ESOP is a good fit or not. So these are the kinds of things that have to take place for, at least on a preliminary basis, to begin some level of discussion or analysis work. So if people are, or as clients or potential clients, this is something you're interested in, I would say, talk to your legal counsel, talk to your accounting professional, maybe get a hold of here at the ABI, reach out to myself. There's a number of people that you can reach out to kind of further some of these discussions. When we talk about Principal Financial Group and the fact of what we do, again, we're talking, and these numbers are actually, our numbers are even higher than these. $90 billion in client funds, $18 billion in ESOP security assets. We have in excess of 3,500 people who dedicated solely to the retirement planning marketplace. We're talking about 50,000 plans, 3 million participants, and again, these numbers are old as of the end of the year. So this is an arena that Principal specializes in. It's something that we do day in and day out. I mentioned in the opening remarks that we're a national leader in the ESOP business. Half of the nation's top, basically 100 majority-owned ESOP companies use us and our administrative services for that. We purchased a firm called Benefit Consultants in 2003, who was the leading provider of expertise with respect to ESOP. So we brought them into our organization through an acquisition. And again, it's just part of the work that we do. We have 27 people nationally that sell and service our ESOPs, or basically our ESOP consultants around the country. You can see some of them, the employee-owned companies and participants that we have in ESOPs that we currently administer today. That was a very, very quick review of some of the things that we see in the ESOP marketplace, some of the things that we specialize in with respect to ESOPs. We're going to be coming out with an article relatively soon. I think it's going to be out in June, along with the summer conference. You'll see that in press and publication. We have a number of things available both on our external website, and I would suggest you engage maybe your current advisor and see if there's some additional information that we can provide to you if you have any questions. Clearly getting hold of us here at ABI would be helpful. I would say that to me would be the first place to start, and we can provide a lot of this stuff through ABI as a member to you to kind of further some of these questions or discussions that you might have. Lisa, with that, I guess we'd have time for some questions,
Yes,
or if you want to
fantastic.
wrap up?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please enter those now. There's a box right below the presentation, and I see Jeanette. Hello, Jeanette is typing as we speak, so we'll see what Jeanette has to say. Thank you very much. Great information. I am, constantly asked as I'm out and about, what exactly is an ESOP, and how do you as time goes on?
Well, one of the things about an ESOP is that you're required essentially to do an annual valuation. So it's all part of the administrative process. So every year the company needs to be valued. So as time changes and as market conditions change, the value of the business may change accordingly. So that has an impact with respect to how you determine the value of the business, because it's required to do an annual business valuation. So, and it's all part of the administrative process that takes place with respect to an ESOP. But Jen, it's a good question because it comes up all the time every time we have some of these discussions.
And they've got that down to a process, the folks that do
Absolutely.
those business valuations.
Absolutely.
So,
And the thing is, we have, I think because people are becoming more aware of the work that we do in the ESOP arena. I know in my email, I've got two recent valuations that came across because the business client is looking for us to kind of provide them perhaps a little bit of direction through one of our advisors about what they potentially could do with the ESOP. So I probably don't get a question every day about ESOPs,
right?
But they do come. But they do come across.
Well, and from our perspective, one of the challenges we see with our members all across the state, especially these smaller rural members, is they wait until things become a crisis, and it's too late to strategize. It's too late to actually be thoughtful about this process. They sell to a venture capital firm in Florida, and there is absolutely no confidence that the company will stay there, that those employees will have jobs, and that's in a lot of ways what makes those rural communities tick, are those family-held companies that just don't have a succession plan in place. So this is a great alternative.
And I think Jeanette's follow-up question
yes.
to me really was, address some of the recent changes approved by the legislature here in Iowa, ESOP tax impact. Here's my short answer to that. I have a Cracker Jack. I always like to say I have a Cracker Jack staff, and I do. Because of some of the changes that have taken place legislatively, and the fact that the session just completed, our home office staff is kind of looking at all of those things. I think we'll probably see some pieces come out, as I mentioned before, specific to Iowa, probably in some of the June press release. So our legal group and our legislative group are kind of going through and looking at some of that stuff specifically to say here's kind of the potential impact as it relates specific to the businesses in Iowa. So I'm going to defer that to my Cracker Jack staff to kind of address.
And I think we've actually gotten an article on that. So Jeanette, I might post that with the webinar.
That'd be great. That'd be great
when we get that up there. So because there are some implications there. And in fact, I know Debbie Durham and her staff at the Economic Development Authority she wants Iowa to become one of the most competitive ESOP states in the nation to help our.
Well, I think it was one of the ESOP consultants I was working with out in New York or something had made a comment to me, kind of in passing, saying, it was more of, I was not aware that Iowa is so friendly to ESOPs. And again, I travel coast to coast and border to border, and a lot of times when I hear things like that, I'm like, well, I was kind of aware of it, but you never think about it because a lot of times I'm always here. Let's see, is there a professional group association of ESOP companies that can be used as resources in the exploration process?
Yes, there is.
There is, and again, I think, Jeanette, I think I would probably, again, refer you back to the folks here at ABI. I mean, I think clearly as an organization, it's an area of expertise we have. I think there's probably, what I'll do is I'll check some of our association firms and organizations that we also utilize, and I'll get that to Lisa so they can maybe post that as well. And
I believe we
sent
had the president of the Iowa chapter speak a few months ago.
Okay.
So I'll get his information, and I'll post that. We'll get that posted on our website. Great questions. Thank you so much. Again, just wanted to update you on some of the upcoming events that we've got here at ABI. We do have our webinar again next week, so please join us for that. All hands are on deck right now, though, for ABI's annual conference. As Troy mentioned earlier, we've got a phenomenal lineup this year. It's a 2.5-day conference, actually. The Thursday is probably one of the best, from a content perspective, conferences that we've ever put together. We're running 3 tracks. We're running a leadership track, a marketing track, and then an HR track. And we did that by design. We did it very thoughtfully. Our board chair, Fred Bowie, this year said we don't want just the business owner there. We want his entire management, or her entire management team. And so we went through and we actually had committees for each one of those tracks that identified the best of the best in those areas, the most timely information that we can get to you. So that Thursday is just chock full of incredible information. But Friday, La Pays de la Résistance, as they say in France, is Jim Collins, author of Good to Great, who will be delving into Great by Choice, the book that was released this September. And we've had calls with him on the phone, and he's just an incredible individual.
He's great. I've actually seen him speak at a conference I was at, and I was, it was one of those, I'll stand in line so let him sign the book. It's pretty compelling.
I think we're going to have that.
Good thing.
So he will be speaking on Friday the 15th. We do have general admission tickets available just to that piece, and to kick him off, we've got a gentleman named Gino Wickman who wrote a book called Traction, and he analyzes the entrepreneurial operating system. And so he's going to be, I think, equally compelling to Jim Collins. He's just not as well known. So please, tickets are available again online. If you go to our website, you can just go out there and learn more about that event. But from the very start to the very finish, there's going to be something for everybody on your management team, and we will not disappoint, I promise. So until next week, thank you so much. Thanks to MyEntrenet. This is a great partnership. We certainly appreciate all of their efforts in getting this technology to you every week.